More than 2 decades later, Gothic remains one of the most iconic cult classic RPGs ever made. Brutal, unforgiving, atmospheric. Now with Gothic 1 Remake, the colony is back, with modern visuals, a reworked presentation, and much heavier PC requirements than many players expected. What's going on, everyone? My name is Monza, and in collaboration with FrameLeap, we bring you the ultimate PC optimization guide for Gothic 1 Remake. Let's get into it. We start with the first option, which is View Distance Quality. According to the description, it should affect draw distance, object quality, and LODs. However, in our test, we see absolutely no difference between low and high settings visually. Performance-wise, the only difference is that experimental mode eats an additional 4 frames, 80 frames versus 76, while visually nothing changes. Therefore, for optimal settings, let's stick to very high. Moving on, the next option is shadow quality. In our case, it only affects shadow resolution, while the draw distance remains the same. We see that medium and low show us the most noticeable difference. In terms of performance, low gives the most at 83 frames, medium eats just 2 more frames, high eats another 2 frames, so we get 78, and experimental goes down to 65. Overall, high turns out to be the optimal setting. Alright, next up is global illumination quality. This is one of the strangest settings because its experimental option surprisingly makes the image worse. You'd think global illumination, especially experimental, would use hardware over software lumen, but in fact, in our scene with trees, the image actually gets worse. Between very high and low, there's absolutely no visual difference. Whether outside or inside, we noticed no quality difference. Performance-wise, low and high give the same 95 frames. Very high eats 5 frames, leaving us with 90, and experimental, which, in our opinion, worsens the image, eats another 25 frames, giving us 66. So for optimal settings, we'd go with high. Moving on, reflection quality. Surprisingly, this is another setting where you'd expect the experimental option to deliver some exceptional image. But in fact, all settings, low, medium, high, very high, and experimental produce exactly the same image. You might think, well, maybe the issue is with global illumination. Let's set it to experimental, and the image might change. But the problem is, when we switch global illumination to experimental, the image does not change at all. We tried looking for other scenes to find any differences, but in reality, none could be found. The same goes for performance. Between low, medium, high, very high, and experimental, there's absolutely no difference. All of these settings give 73 frames. Alright, moving on. Post-processing quality. This setting, according to the description, should affect ambient occlusion, depth of field, blur, and so on. In the test scenes indoors, there's absolutely no visible difference between all settings, low, medium, high, very high, and experimental. They all produce the same image. The same happens in the outdoor scene, absolutely no difference. And in terms of performance, the situation is even stranger. Experimental settings can actually give more frames than low. 66 on experimental and 61 on low. And all of the other settings give the same image at 65 to 66 frames. Moving on, texture quality. The situation here is almost the same, starting from high, that is, high, very high, and experimental, we get identical texture quality. Medium and low show more noticeable differences on environmental objects, though not on characters. In terms of memory usage, low uses 9.2 GB, medium 9.3, high 9.6, very high at 9.5, and experimental 9.8 of VRAM. In our opinion, high will be the best option for optimized settings, for visuals and performance. Moving on, effects quality. Here we do see differences between each option. In our scene, we have fog and God rays, and as we lower the settings, the resolution and quality of these effects gradually disappear from the scene. In terms of performance, low, medium, and high give roughly the same number of frames, 76 to 75. Very high gives 73, and experimental 66. There's no visual difference between experimental and very high, so I think sometimes we can sacrifice 2 or 3 frames for very high, which is basically like experimental, keeping all the visual effects in their original quality. Let's move on. Foliage quality. This setting affects how much grass, trees, and other vegetation are in the scene. When we look from experimental down to low, the difference is mainly noticeable only between medium and low. In terms of performance, low gives us 75 frames, medium 73, and high, very high, and experimental share the same FPS, 71. For optimal settings, we would recommend to stick with medium, because overall it looks like all the other high settings while also giving a bit more frames. In another scene, as a clear example, we see that between experimental and low, the difference is really small, and medium kind of bridges that visual gap. Alright, next up is shading quality. According to the description, it should affect materials, textures, hair, fur, but in practice, in several test scenes, like the first one, we see no difference on the character. The shimmering effect remains on all settings, but between experimental and low, we do see some difference in background materials. Stones look a bit more detailed. The second scene confirms this. There's no difference, except low looks slightly less refined. Performance-wise, low gives 96 frames, but medium, high, very high, and experimental all give 91. But the odd thing is, besides materials, it also affects tree behavior. On low, trees are static, but from medium upward, they move again. That's strange since we have a separate setting that supposedly controls wind quality. Okay, moving on. Landscape quality. There's absolutely no difference from experimental down to medium. Only at low do we see a very, very small difference. Just a few distant stones aren't rendered. But it's so hard to notice that we had to recheck it several times across multiple scenes. In terms of performance, there's absolutely no difference whatsoever. Every single setting gives you the same 100 frames in our case. So for optimized settings, choose very high or experimental. Finally, the last setting is wind quality. It only has two options, low and high, but visually there's absolutely no difference, both in terms of performance and image quality. So the recommendation here is simply to keep it on high. Overall, it's a strange situation where shading quality affects trees, but wind quality doesn't. But well, it is what it is. So the moment you've all been waiting for, optimized settings. View distance quality, very high. No visual changes between settings. Experimental costs about 4 FPS, 80 down to 76. For no image quality improvement and a few extra percentage of CPU usage. Shadow quality, high. This option mainly affects shadow resolution. High provides the best balance between visual quality and performance. Global illumination quality, high. No visible difference between low and very high. Experimental looks worse in some scenes and costs around 25 FPS. Reflection quality, very high. No visual or performance differences across all settings. Every preset delivered the same image and FPS. Post-processing quality, very high. No visible differences between settings. Performance is nearly identical, with experimental oddly performing slightly better than low. Texture quality, high, as this option avoids unnecessary VRAM usage while maintaining maximum visual quality. Effects quality, very high, as it preserves fog and God rays at full quality. Experimental offers no visual improvement while costing about 7 FPS. Foliage quality, medium. Looks nearly identical to higher settings while providing a small performance boost, about 2 extra FPS. Shading quality, very high. Low reduces material quality and disables tree movement. And everything above, like high or very high, restores full visuals without any FPS loss. Landscape quality, very high, as virtually no visual or performance differences. Only low removes a few distant rocks. Wind quality, high. We got no measurable visual or performance impact. Alright, let's compare optimal settings versus very high. On an RTX 5080 in 4K with DLSS balanced, our optimized settings give us around 12% more frames, 88 versus about 78. So the situation is better overall. If we compare it with experimental settings, the difference is much bigger, around 80 frames versus 48 to 50. That's a pretty large gap, and visually the image doesn't differ. As we said earlier, experimental settings like global illumination consume more, but the image doesn't actually get any better. And to wrap it up, let's compare other GPUs from different segments. The RTX 5060 from the budget segment, the RTX 5070 from mid-budget, and the RTX 5080 from high budget. Using our optimal settings, DLSS on balanced and 4K, the RTX 5060 averages around 43 frames, the RTX 5070 around 65, and the RTX 5080 around 90. Overall, that's a pretty decent result for a game running on Unreal Engine 5. Thank you so much for watching this optimization guide for Gothic 1 Remake by FrameLeap and Monza. Let us know, did our optimized settings work for you? And with that, we'll catch you in the next video.